Well, in order to experience complete freedom, complete openness, complete spaciousness, complete well-being in all situations, nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to change whatsoever. In other words, the situations don't need to change. The circumstances of our lives don't need to change. Our thoughts don't need to change, and our emotions don't need to change. We don't need to change anything. We don't need to sit in a special position or stand or lie down in a special position or do anything in particular with our bodies. We don't need to either close our eyes or open our eyes or hold them at a half mast. So nothing needs to change. However we feel comfortable in a totally easygoing way, completely carefree, neither tense or loose, all the time, no matter where we are or what we're doing, our natural state of perception is wide open and completely at ease. If we feel like there's anything else going on, it's only because we've trained ourselves to see otherwise. That's it. Our natural state of perception in every single moment is always spontaneously free and wide open, completely wide open, like vast and infinite space. And that illustration, vast and infinite space, filled with light, filled with sunlight, is the actual complete perceptual openness of our own perception in every single experience. So even though we may have trained ourselves to be very object-oriented in our perceiving, every perception begins, ends, and during its entire duration is completely wide open, like the vast infinite blue sky filled with sunlight. And as all perceptions only are that, every single perception is pure. The only thing that ever occurs is pure perceiving, however we describe it as otherwise. So is that clear? Nothing needs to be gotten or attained. We don't need to go anywhere outside of our own skin in order to experience the natural reality of our own being. All right. Let's see. There's nothing else to say. There really isn't anything else to say. Within pure perception, which, like the illustration, is open, spacious, like the vast and infinite blue sky filled with light, whatever appears is an appearance of that wide open perception and nothing else. It's always completely pure, completely at ease, and always and forever there's nothing that needs to be done about it. Whatever appears within purity is purity. Whatever appears within the wholly positive expanse is wholly positive. Whatever appears within the beneficial expanse is entirely beneficial. And what that means is that no matter what the appearance looks like, and no matter how we've learned to describe it, it is always spontaneously pure and free. And if we don't see that throughout the day and night in our life right now, it's very easy to train ourselves to see that way. We could call this natural seeing. Natural seeing. And it can be understood to a certain degree mentally. However, we can never access it only by mental means. If we try to access it by mental means or by any kinds of methods or practices, then we try to use words and concepts to describe what transcends words, what transcends descriptions. So see, we can only understand a little bit of it through mental processes. It's just like what I'm saying here is one part of the experience of being here, but it's only one part of the experience of being here. There's something about the experience of being here that transcends the words being said. So you see, this is true with every experience. It's just that in this particular room of people, there are many people who are interested in exactly the same thing. And so there's a resonance, an ease of being that is very obvious and present here. We can all sense it and feel it because we're in common agreement about this. We're in common agreement about this most urgent of matters. Now, if we were all gathered somewhere else in a room and we were all going to get free coupons for McDonald's hamburgers, then we would all have another thing that we were really interested in and committed to. So the words there would have a different feeling, perhaps, about what was going on in that space. But the reality of what we are is not anything that comes to us through anyone else. It can't possibly come to us through anyone else. It's absolutely impossible. So if we think it's coming to us through someone else, then we're looking away from what we are. Because if we're looking to someone else, then you see it's what's looking that we need to relax as. We need to relax as what's looking, not at what's being looked at. So the best we can do in terms of someone to support us with that is to find out who's going to be able to support us 100%, in other words, be there for us 24 hours a day if need be, and relaxing into this looking, just relaxing into this looking over and over again until it becomes what we see rather than objects being what we see. When we're born, our way of seeing is completely wide open. Our awareness is completely wide open and isn't object-oriented at all. So this is something we learn. We learn object-oriented seeing, object-oriented programming through repetition of seeing objects. That's how it comes about. So you see, it comes about gradually. It doesn't come about all at once. When we're born, we have no sense of being anybody, and we have no sense of anyone else being anybody either. There's just complete perceptual openness in all experience. Then we train ourselves through exposure to the people around us to see objects, to identify ourselves as an object. Technically what's called a subject, but let's look at it all as objects. Identify ourselves as an object or point of view, and then learn to just differentiate all these appearances as different objects or points of view. It takes us a long time, years, to learn the concept of I. That's a very difficult concept. So you see, it isn't one we're born with. No matter what people may say, no matter what conventional beliefs may be about that, no one is born as an I. No one carries over anything else from any other time, because perception is timeless. It's wide open and spacious. It's never held to or been collapsed into time or cause and effect or place or location. That has never occurred, and it never will occur. Just because we train ourselves to believe that does not mean that has occurred. It does not mean it has occurred. It has never occurred. And at the same time, there's no need to hold to any way of speaking about what we are or any kind of position. like saying nothing exists, nothing ever happened, or everything exists, everything is happening, everything's material. We don't need to hold to either. Seeing is completely spacious and completely free. It's never had anything to hold on to within its seeing. So you see, it's absolutely unnecessary to hold on to any description of this, either saying that things exist or that they don't exist. What is most obvious to us in every moment of living is the way things are. And what's most obvious to us in every moment of living isn't a mental process. It's here, it's this magnificent display of what's here, and it is not object-oriented in any way. If we want to orient towards an object, we have to focus in. But most of our experience for all of our lives is just this wide open seeing of everything all at once, perfect all at once, with no division. The only division that seems to come about comes through description of this reality as being something other than what it is, and then fixating on that description. So to say, everything, there really are all these people, and there are 7 billion of them at least, and each one is an individual one, and it's hard to keep track of all this, isn't it? Just in that brief description, it's a difficult mental exercise to keep track of such a concept. But when we just relax and allow the naturalness of our own seeing to be completely wide open, and to be engaged with and as everything just as it is, then it's much easier to live in all ways. So it's much easier to live, have relationships, to work, to contribute to life. When we open to our natural seeing, in that we experience a lot of benefit for ourselves. And what kind of benefit is experienced? Well, the benefit that is experienced is just a natural ease in living, because we no longer need to hold on to anything that appears, whether it's a thought, an emotion, or an experience. They're all equal. They don't need to be changed in any way whatsoever. Descriptions of purity are all purity at their basis. So if a description of purity says anger, it's still a description of purity. If a description says joy, it's still a description of purity. It's the same purity. So in that wide open seeing is an expanse of equalness and evenness. Everything that appears is absolutely equal and even. Now, this may not be what we've learned, however, it is so. What we've learned is incorrect. It's incorrect about in terms of who we really are. It's completely incorrect. Because we describe our thoughts and emotions as positive and negative does not mean that those appearances are actually positive and negative. These are just ways of describing reality in a conventional sort of way. But it isn't really the natural way of our being to describe everything in such a way, to divvy it up and say this is the good stuff and this is the bad stuff. We don't need to do that in order to know what to do and how to act. Beyond all that labeling, beyond transcending good and bad, is natural wisdom that requires no thinking. It's wisdom on the fly. In other words, it doesn't need to think for a long period of time to come to a decision and then regret the decision or feel ambivalent about it or need to take a position about it after. It's wisdom on the fly, which means it's completely spontaneous. It's completely spontaneous and naturally occurring without any forethought or afterthought. This is our natural state. Our natural state of completely open wisdom, completely free wisdom, does not require any objects to become wise. So it doesn't require collecting a bunch of particular thoughts or emotions or a combination of the two and throw in a few experiences to arrive at primordial wisdom. Primordial wisdom is always wise. It's fundamentally wise, and it doesn't need any help from the dictionary. Needs no help whatsoever from the dictionary. The dictionary is an appearance of this natural wisdom. However, natural wisdom is far, far beyond it. It's just one of the many appearances of the magnificent display. When we give this to ourselves by just resting as the seeing in a totally uncontrived way, for short moments, repeated many times until it becomes spontaneous and automatic, then we give ourselves the greatest gift of life, the most precious gift of human life. Everything that appears, no matter what it is, whether it seems to be internal, our own body, or external, our own body's kind of a combination of the internal and the external. But no matter what it is that appears, whatever appears is like a mirage. It's like a mirage. It's a vivid appearance of space, of light-filled space. Or it's like an appearance of a hologram. A hologram is another appearance of light-filled space in which all the images seem very vivid, clear, and distinct, but neither in a mirage nor in a hologram would we look for anything to depend on. We wouldn't look for anything there. We wouldn't look for love. We wouldn't look for relief from anxiety or depression or panic or any other afflictive state. And we wouldn't look for anything, whether it was positive or negative, in a mirage or a hologram. We would know not to look there. We would automatically know not to look there. And this is the case, too, with everything that appears. Everything that appears is like a mirage or a hologram. It's a vivid appearance of forever empty seeing, of forever empty, stainless looking. And it'll never be any other way than that. If we want to describe it as some other way than that, then we have complete freedom to do that. This is just the way it is for human beings. We have complete freedom to see our life and our world in any way we want to. However, we don't need to adopt conventional beliefs if we don't want to. And if we have adopted conventional beliefs, we can start right now and just allowing seeing to happen, allowing that wide open seeing to simply be as it is, without any need to cling to all the labels, or without any need to treat ourselves as though who we are is an accumulation of all these mirage-like appearances of thoughts, emotions, and experiences we've had during our life. If we do that, if we think we are an accumulation of all these points of view we've had during our life, then that's what we'll believe. That's what we'll think is true about ourselves, and we'll feel batted around by that, like a ping pong ball going back and forth between one thought and another thought, one emotion and another emotion, one experience and another experience, constantly seeking better thoughts, better emotions, and better experiences. Has anyone ever done that? Tried to find happiness in better thoughts, better emotions, and experiences, or am I the only one? However, we never find it any better, do we? We say, oh yes, just at last I've found the perfect experiences, and these are going to be the ones that are happy experiences. I'll change my life completely to these new experiences, and then in these new experiences, in this new mirage, that's where my happiness is going to be. It's not in the old mirage, but I am going to find it in the new mirage. So usually we have certain areas of our life where we try to change things in order to find a sense of fulfillment there. And these are usually the areas of food, money, sex, work, and relationships. That somehow we're going to change one of these things into a better mirage. So we're going to take our old mirage, for example, of not having enough money, and we're going to have a new mirage of getting more money. And this is going to make us happy. Or we haven't been eating the right kind of food. We've been eating meat, maybe, and so we've been in the meat mirage, and now we're going to go over to the vegetarian mirage. And sex, well, it's not happening for us in the current mirage, so we're going to look for a better mirage, a mirage with more of it or less of it, or with the right kinds of beings, or whatever it is. But we're going to exchange one mirage for another mirage. Work, the same thing. We don't like our job, our boss is crummy, and the people who are working with us, so we hope we never see them again. So we're going to exchange that mirage for the new mirage, the happy mirage. But none of these mirage-like appearances ever bring about anything. And what about relationships? Anyone want to talk about relationships? Well, the same here. It's, oh, this mirage, it's not giving me the water I want, so I see another mirage. Oh, there's got to be water there. And then we have the whole, especially with the relationships, but with everything too, with relationships, we have not only the mirage of the object we're oriented on. We see the guy or we see the gal, and they're the ones for us, and oh, they look so wonderful. No one's ever looked as wonderful. But we not only have their appearance, but then inside we have these tremendous feelings. Oh, I'm so in love. I've never been in love like this before. This is it. This is new. It's never been like this, and this is going to be the one. Has anyone ever felt like that? Over and over and over again. So now what does that tell us, huh? It just says, well, no matter what the appearances are, they're all mirage-like in nature. We're not going to find well-being and satisfaction there. And if we feel that tremendous openness of love when we fall in love with someone, that's a time to just stop and say, wow, where is that love? It's right here. Where is that tremendous openness, that carefree love that sees former enemies as friends? Where is that? Well, it's right here. That's where it is. And then it's time to just rest as that and say to the other person, thank you very much. See you later. I'm going to get acquainted with what's opened up within me. I'm just going to get acquainted with that. This feels so good and it's within me, so I don't need anybody else to make it happen. But you see, we make a critical error at that point. We say, aha, I feel this because of that object over there. This love is due to that object. So we run towards the object, cling to it, and say, oh, be with me forever, never die. Never separate from me, and I will feel this love forever. We both will, and we just know it. But what happens then? the love disappears. And because we blame the love on the other person, when it disappears, we blame the disappearance on the other person. We say, oh, the love's gone and it's you. You know, it's because you don't tie your shoes the right way, or when you get out of the shower, you don't put the towel down, you leave a puddle on the floor, then I slip in it. And so, but the mirages, they're just all the same, really, no matter what they are. And so there's never any appearance where we're going to find anything we can count on. We can't even find anything we can count on here. How could we possibly find anything to count on anywhere else? So, you know, within our own being, we cannot count on this. This that is born, lives, and dies is not something we should be counting on because it's passing. However, we have something about us that we can count on, but it has nothing to do with our physical being. It's embodied in our physical being, but it is beyond physical being. It transcends physical being. It doesn't need birth, life, and death in order to be. So that's what we want to know about in terms of living a life that we can be happy in, that where we can be beneficial to ourselves and be beneficial to others. If we rely on the mirage, whether it's the mirage of ourselves or any other appearance, then it doesn't allow for that. Really, we hardly ever think about ourselves. It just seems like we do. We hardly ever think about, oh, yes, I'm Candace, and here I am, you know, I'm in this body, and I've got skin and all these things. We rarely ever think of ourselves like that. So it's just an assumption that we have. All of the time our seeing is wide open and spacious. Even when we're running headlong, one mirage headlong towards another, what happens when two mirages get together? There's nothing but space, you know. All mirages are made of nothing but space, but aware space. So this is our actual experience of seeing in every moment. Complete perceptual openness, wide open and spacious. No ideas about anything. No need to have any word in the dictionary to use as a support of describing the way things are. Just this wide open seeing. That's all in our entire birth, life, and death that is indestructible. That's the only thing about our lives that is indestructible. So when we get to know that, we get to know that about us, which is indestructible. Everything else, all appearances, no matter what they are, all the things that the dictionary describes, they're all temporary. They're temporary appearances, just like a mirage. There's nothing in them whatsoever that can be counted on. Even the sun will burn out in 20 million years. Now, aren't we all really counting on the sun to be there? But even the sun, too, it'll disappear. The sun, like everything else, is comprised of space. We can't really say that it exists, but we can't say that it doesn't exist either. We can say that it can't be found to exist in its own right, as it's comprised only of space. And all mirages are like that. A mirage cannot be found to exist in its own right. It does not have a nature independent of space. It does not have an independent nature. It does not have an origin that's separate from aware, pure space. And this is our own condition, our own natural condition, just as it is. This completely wide open, pure perception, pure seeing that can't be turned on and off. We can show this to ourselves in simple ways. Even at night, when our eyes are closed, we're seeing. We're seeing everything that goes on in a dream. And the eyes aren't required to do that. It's just the openness, the complete openness of natural seeing, the natural awareness that is the essence of everything, the natural mind. This is what is seeing. We could say there's no one seeing, but we really don't need to fixate on that either. Who cares? No one's seeing, someone's seeing. They're not two. So we don't have to take up a position anywhere. We don't need any referential points of description. In fact, the fewer the better. The naturalness of our own being is just as it is. It doesn't need a bunch of fancy descriptions. If we have a lot of fancy descriptions, we won't understand it, and there will be no way we can communicate it to anyone else either. So the simpler the better. KISS, that's the acronym. Keep it simple, sweetheart. Maybe you heard that in some other way. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask?
We're not using the boom mic, so
Oh, we're not?
no.
It isn't working? Or?
No, there's the wonderfully reliable Indian electricity supply is creating some sort of signal, so we're recording.
Oh, we're recording, okay.
Yeah, we'll be able to.
We'll be
enhance
able
it.
to,
Yeah.
and you'll be able
Yeah.
to jack up the
Yeah.
sound.
So you can just ask your questions.
Yeah, it's not exactly a question, but I hear what you said. I heard what you said, and I was reading another author, Ken Wilber. I don't know if you know him, but he says that what you're talking about sounds a lot like the Great Perfection or Dzogchen, and he emphasizes the importance of living that the dream does matter.
Mm-hmm.
That if in many religions they'll have like practices of ethics and morality and healthy lifestyle, which it basically is trying to change the content of the dream, making it a pleasant dream.
Mm-hmm.
And he says the purpose of that. No, he says it's easier to see the great perfection and the seer, to be aware of that when the dream is a pleasant dream, versus if we were all extremely hungry and uncomfortable and having really bad emotional conflict, he suggests, and it makes sense to me, that it would be harder to recognize that spacious openness, and that's why he says it's actually important to live a lifestyle that is harmonious, that is healthy or whatever, just to make the dream pleasant, the mirage pleasant, more pleasant. Not necessarily to get attached to that either, but it's easier to be aware of that. And I think like most of the people here in the room are, we're fed and we have basic comforts met, and I think it would be, giving a satsang to people that were, or whatever this thing is, that were not living in these circumstances, or would be, I don't know if it would be as relevant to the people in that circumstance, but I'm just saying that because that makes some sense to me, I guess. I think that the mirage, having a nice mirage is more conducive to being aware of the seer, whatever you call it, rather than a negative, a bad mirage. And then another question I have is, okay, this is a mirage and everything, but still I have, in some sense, a body and an ego self, and I function in this world and then I wonder, okay, how am I going to, I mean, does it matter how I live my life, whether I'm an asshole or not, or, I'm just saying, like.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I guess,
If it matters
in your
how you
opinion.
live your life, whether you're an asshole.
Yeah, I mean,
or not.
I'm
Well,
just saying, in your
does
teaching.
it matter to you?
Does it matter
To you whether you're an asshole or not?
Um,
We can talk about books, but let's talk about you
yeah.
and your own experience.
It matters to me to some extent, yeah.
To some
To
extent.
some extent.
So the kind of the jury's out.
Yeah.
What's your name?
My name's Gil.
Oh, I thought so. Okay. Now, yeah, the jury's out, sort of, on whether Gil's going to be an asshole.
I won't say
or
an
not.
asshole, but I don't necessarily think that I'm always motivated to do the most righteous actions and such.
Well,
Yeah.
that's very honest, isn't it? Now, how many of us can say that about ourselves, that we're not always motivated? You know, this is a normal thing for people to have thoughts like this, experiences like this, and emotions like this.
Mhm.
But what's most important of all is for you, in your own experience, to experience yourself as you are. Aside from all the conventional beliefs, everything that's written in books, all the philosophies and theories that are written about, whether it's the person you mentioned or the great completion, the great perfection, Dzogchen, or whatever it is, what's most important is for you, in the essentialness of your own being, to remain as you are in every moment, which is completely wide open and spacious. And in that complete openness and spaciousness is an incredible wisdom. There isn't total anarchy, helter-skelter, pell-mell, not knowing what to do. There's complete lucidity and clarity of knowing what to do and how to act in every situation. Now, is it easier to do that? I heard implied in what you said. Is it easier to do that if you're trying to be a nice person? Basically, that's what you said, trying to create a pleasant dream. Well, let's look at it in this simple way. Within the all-encompassing pure view of awareness are included and contained all points of view. So that all-encompassing pure view of awareness is your own awareness. It's what's seeing as Gil right now. And then within that seeing are all these points of view, whatever they are, all the appearances, thoughts, emotions, and experiences. If you get familiar with what's seeing, then you understand all the points of view that are included and contained within that. And that's what's called natural wisdom. You have a balanced view. So from this place of natural wisdom, this balanced view, then you know what to do and how to act in a spontaneously beneficial way, both for yourself and for other people. Now, while you're going about getting familiar with yourself as you are, just gaining familiarity with that and becoming stable in it, then a lot of the points of view that come up might distract you from that. In one way or another, you might want to hold on to them or do whatever Gil does with those things. So because we've trained ourselves to see in a certain sort of way, like you've trained yourself to see in Gil's way, then there can be certain things for each person, as there are for you, that are very distracting, that might distract from wide open seeing. And so if you're familiar with what those things are, then it's easier to relax. Like in the Great Freedom Teaching, anyone who wants to explore it in that depth can become very familiar with what their own points of view are, and there are many people here who have done that, so that it's easier to relax then. And those points of view include points of view about all of those things I just mentioned: food, money, sex, work, and relationships. Those are the ones that are so for most of us. And when we start to just rest as we are, for many of us, we get distracted particularly by afflictive states, whether they're inner or outer. So our relationships with other people, experiences we have, or what's going on inside, afflictive thoughts and afflictive emotions. If we have no idea what our own personal points of view are, and I've never met a person who does, I've been upon meeting them, that they have known that. If we know, oh, thank you so much, Niels. If we know what those are, then we're not going to be blindsided by them. In other words, it's not going to be so easy to be distracted by them. Now, the way in which that comes about can be very easeful and very quick, but it isn't a philosophical matter. It's not a matter of the mind. It's not a matter of the mind at all. The mind is that which is pondering everything that's being said. There's this point of view that there's a mind, and that mind needs to be thinking about everything. That it needs to.
So do you see, like, if you go take more traditional paths like yoga or Buddhist, they have like disciplines. You do maybe asana just to make a healthy body. Meditation practice, follow certain moral precepts. Do you find them to be, it sounds like from what you're saying, all you need to do is just rest in this awareness, and then all your actions will come from this primordial wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
But, so if that's the case, it sounds like there's no merit to following the precepts of, depending on the Eightfold Path or the Four Noble Truths or the Yama and Niyama or whatever traditional path you say, I guess I'm not sure if I completely understand what you're saying or if I agree with what you're saying.
That's okay. You're here for the first time, so. You see, all of the things that you described, they were created thousands of years ago. And they were created within very specific cultural milieu. In other words, people were living in an area where most of them would never travel more than 50 miles from the area where they lived. When all of these traditions were created, almost everyone was illiterate. In other words, they did not read or write. Many of the teachers, in fact, did not read or write. So a lot of it was just an oral tradition. And all of these traditions, many of them are exquisitely beautiful. And they're absolutely right on in certain ways. But even within all these traditions, there are epitome traditions that have always taught the same thing, to rest imperturbably. This is the most pervasive teaching within human culture. And it isn't one that abandons moral precepts. It's beyond moral precepts. And it is taught in such a simple way that it includes every detail of life, but not from the standpoint of legislating it. It just says, this is the way things are. And in the Great Freedom Teaching, we have very beautiful formal teachings. And these formal teachings communicate in a contemporary way the highest truths that have always been communicated. But rather than communicating them in a way that only some people can understand, they're communicated in a way that anyone on earth can understand, whether they're eating or not. So this particular meeting we're having, like you mentioned, there are probably mostly well-fed people here. Although, from my experience of the last month, I don't know. But I don't feel particularly well-fed. But you see, this isn't the only group I speak to. You see, I speak to people all over the world, and I speak not only through this forum, but many other forums as well, the internet and teleconferencing, many, many other ways. So you see, today, what's more important than ever, because we are a global human culture, is that we have contemporary traditions that are very alive, vital, that don't overlook anything, and that bring people together in a completely harmonious way all over the globe. A single human culture brought together in a completely harmonious way. And when people come together in a completely harmonious way, the mental is part of it, but the mental is a small part of it. When people come together in a loving, harmonious way, there's great warmth, there's great inclusion. Everyone is included, no matter who they are, not just the educated who can read philosophy books and try to understand things at a meta system level. Do you see what I'm saying? So today we have a very simple approach that people everywhere can understand. And that's just the way it is. It doesn't negate anything else. It's just saying that this is the way it is at this time. However, for you, I think it's most important that in your own experience, if this is something that's of interest to you, that you come to know yourself as you are. I can tell you there will be no greater adventure you'll ever take, no matter how you go about doing that.
I do know myself as I am. So, but nonetheless, I do feel that knowing myself as I am doesn't, I don't really, that whole thing that all my actions come out of the primordial wisdom, I feel that even if I have still this person that I can control and act out of, and it doesn't affect who I truly am, this spacious awareness. So I do have the ability to choose to lead my life a certain way as a human being, as Gil as a body, and that doesn't make any difference as far as my true nature. So, I mean, to me, like, I have a question with myself that I find a lot of these satsang type things don't answer, is how am I going to live my life? And I just feel that's something that I'm going to answer for myself. Yeah, but I don't feel that takes away from my self-knowledge or knowledge of the way things truly are.
Well, it's very important that you have a sense of who you are at this point in your life. That's extremely important. And the question you ask, how am I going to live my life, is also extremely important. And if you're really interested in that, you're in a good place for that in this room. Because there are many people in this room who have answered that question for themselves. So you see, your question that you've asked is very natural. It's a question I asked when I was a young person too. And what I found is that there were very few people who could support me in answering that question. So it's not only important that I ask the question, but also that there is a way now for people to feel supported in that. It's a very essential question. It's a very basic question. And it's one that's easily responded to. Is there anyone here who would like to share their experience about that? What to do with their life? Alan? Sure.
Yeah, I was much like you, Gil. I was very interested in becoming free, but very worried about all the teachings that were basically talking about everything being an illusion, and I'd been to several teachers who said nothing mattered, all of these things. So I've been searching for a long time. So when I came here last February, I think it was, and I started this very simple practice of resting, something quite quickly started to happen. There was the I doesn't get beaten out of existence, but somehow it becomes unnecessary, and something else starts to come forward. And what I found was that there was a genuine feeling of wanting to serve, of wanting to do something. So what happened was in this rest, I started to notice that I would be in a room with people and I would pick up on certain, like I'd feel confused. So I was feeling confusion. And what I saw was that the confusion wasn't mine, that it was actually in the room. And then from there I took another step and thought, well, hang on a minute, in rest, there is no person here. I'm just one of the points of view within that awareness. And so the next step was to see that, oh, I'm actually resting for everyone. I'm resting for this confusion that's there. Then when I saw that there was nobody there to rest, what I saw was that there was only rest. And that rest, this simple practice of rest, was an outpouring of compassion. That's all it was. So all I could do was be that outpouring of compassion in whatever way that I can be that outpouring. I mean, my background is working class, poor education, but I can actually sit up here now and talk about an outpouring of compassion. This is impossible. This is impossible. I can only tell you it's extremely genuine. It's very real. And I feel this compassion for everyone in this room, and the service that I want to give will come, whatever it is. I don't know what that'll be yet. That's really all I've got to say.
Thank you, Alan.
I'm Heather. And when I came to the teaching, I had been seeking in many different ways. And I had many conversations with friends about what I was going to do with my life, how I was going to contribute to the world. And I could barely get out of bed on a daily basis. So where there was this movement that was very strong to be of service and of benefit to others, even in a simple way, just with my own family, I was finding that I couldn't do that, and I felt very conflicted about wanting to be kind, wanting to be giving, wanting to be loving, but feeling anger and contempt. And had a lot of confusion. So when I came to the teaching, the very simple, basic instruction was to just rest. Just rest naturally. And everything will be revealed in that rest. And not only will everything be revealed in that rest, but there's total support for resting and for knowing what to do, how to act, all that. And this is what I've found. I've found that committing to natural rest and sharing that with others has brought about a life of incredible benefit, tremendous benefit, and a life that I could never imagine, would have never imagined. And as a matter of fact, the fact that everyone is sitting in this room is an incredible manifestation of this benefit, because when I met Candace, I met her, she had just started teaching publicly, and I was in a room with 4 other people at that time. And when I said that I had come from a tradition where people would say, find someone who has what you want, and then ask them how they got that. And then do what they did to get that. So I met Candace. I knew that I definitely wanted what she had to offer. So I stuck around. And I committed, and she said, I only work with people who want to. Her first inquiry was, how can everyone know that they are this? How can everyone know the fundamental being of their nature? And that is the one pointed focus of her life. So when I met her, she said, I only work with people who want to teach this message. Are you on board? And I said, definitely. Though I had absolutely no idea what that meant. And it was the two, for a year we would meet one-on-one, and I would receive these teachings, and the whole time the vision was that all 7 billion plus people would know this fundamental nature, this wisdom, compassion, love, benefit that is inherent to all of us, that most of us have no idea that this is our true nature. So there we were, and now here we are. And this is just one room full of people around the world, on every single continent except Antarctica, but that won't be long, who are participating in the benefit of their own wisdom and sharing that with others. So, and this is entirely unimaginable. This was entirely unimaginable to me. So, as we talk about, we really are in a pickle as humankind. And intellectual speculation and one-upmanship and better than, all of these points of view are choices that we've made. Each individual, we make choice by choice, individual by individual. And this has brought us to where we are as humankind. And as long as we make these kind of choices, continue to make these kind of choices, it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. So this teaching, what's being offered here, is an offering of complete, open-hearted warmth and well-wishing for the benefit of all beings, that all beings live as this inherent wisdom. And I know almost everyone who's come to this teaching, and I have seen incredible transformations in people. I see it on a daily basis. So it's an open invitation, and it's just such a delight to be here with everyone. Thank you.